Yes, hello. Good evening to everyone. Good morning, Dominique. Thank you for waking up early today, especially for us, for ESSEC alumni and students. We know that you spent a lot of time in the offices of Microsoft and Oracle and IBM, and thank you for taking time to talk to us today. Dear audience, let me present Dominique Piotet, who is actually the leader and expert in digital transformation, and he is advising the companies from 500 Fortune. He's an entrepreneur, and he is, as he says, one leg in US, one leg in France. However, right now he's sharing his time between Ukraine and California. Indeed, Dominique knows quite well the Ukrainian market because he was a CEO of Unicity of Ukraine. I can tell that it's kind of Silicon Valley of Ukraine. He is currently the president of French Tech in Kiev. He is also the founder and the CEO of the Team for Humanity, so helping to transform new technology into humanitarian aid. And we organize this conference in cooperation and partnership with ESSEC Alumni Club of Entrepreneurs. And we are welcoming also the president today, Pierre-Emmanuel Saint-Esprit, who is also a circular economy officer at Medtech Group. ESSEC Alumni has engaged for Ukraine, and one of our mission is to highlight the situation in Ukraine and inform our community about this humanitarian crisis and its impact on the world. We organize a series of conferences dedicated to macroeconomy, geopolitics, negotiation, agro sector, and the others. And of course, while talking to Ukraine, we should talk about entrepreneurship. Ukraine is well known by its developers. However, not everyone knows about the innovations of Ukrainians and as well as the quality of technology. So let's start our conference. Please feel free to ask your questions directly to Dominique to have discussion, or you can always put them in the chat and we'll come back to them at the end of the conference. Thank you, and Dominique, the floor is yours.
Cool, thank you. Can you hear me? Good. Well, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be with you and to be able to share a few thoughts on Ukraine, the tech ecosystem of Ukraine, and technology, and also the role of technology during the war, because I think really this war is not only showing us that Ukraine is a great country and a very resilient country, but it's also showing us that it's an amazing tech country with amazing tech talent and amazing technology. And I will really try to develop this. First, if you have questions, I mean, I didn't want to prepare any slides because I'm tired of slides. I mean, honestly, I think we've seen way too many of those. But please ask questions. Don't hesitate. Raise your hand. I will take the question as they come, or keep them for the end, or put them in the chat. But really, don't hesitate. Let's make this more a conversation. I will try to cover three topics. First, I will, maybe tell you a little bit more about me and Ukraine, and then how I end up going to Ukraine and spending time in Ukraine and being involved with Ukraine and living in Ukraine. The second thing is I will tell you a few things around the tech ecosystem, the Ukrainian tech ecosystem, just before the war. Because I think to understand what's going on right now, it's important to understand where we were before the war began in terms of tech and Ukrainian tech. And then my third point is going to be to talk to you about the tech ecosystem during the war. What is happening right now, which is actually extremely interesting and very unique. And we have a lot actually to learn from it, from in terms of just fighting using technology. Very interesting. So first, me. Well, I'm French, as you can tell by my lovely accent, even though I moved to the US in 2004. But you know, French people, even though we moved to different countries, we always keep our accent. That's part of us, I guess. So I'm French. I moved to San Francisco in 2004. I've been working in tech my entire career. And I'm an entrepreneur, and it's important for me. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, creating companies, failing a few of them, and but being successful with a few others. Sold my last company and got bored in San Francisco. San Francisco a few years ago was actually not a great place. It was not super fun. The tech ecosystem was a little bit slowing down, and I wanted a new adventure. And that new adventure happened to be Ukraine. And Ukraine kind of came to me as a surprise, not something I was expecting at all. I received a phone call from a headhunter telling me, "Hey, do you know Ukraine?" I was like, "No." Do you want to know Ukraine? No. I said, no, but there's tons of cool things happening in Ukraine in terms of technology. You should go and see. And actually, I realized that I have a lot of friends who have moved to the US, but who are Ukrainians or who have Ukrainian roots and who are developers for great companies here. So I decided to take a plane and to go to Kyiv, and I didn't get back. I stayed for almost 3.5 years until the war began. I was lucky enough to be able to manage a place called Unit City. For those of you who go to Kyiv, you have to go visit Unit City. It's for the people who are French, probably you know Station F in Paris, which is supposedly one of the largest tech incubator in the world. Well, Unit City is Station F times 30, so it's 30 times bigger. We have, I mean, it's bigger in size, it's bigger in terms of startup, it's bigger in terms of the number of people working, it's bigger in terms of funding, and that was possible because of the tech ecosystem of Ukraine. So let's zoom in a little bit into what is a tech ecosystem, because I think it's important to understand what are we talking about when we talk about a tech ecosystem. Of course, everybody knows Silicon Valley. Everybody knows San Francisco, Palo Alto, Cupertino, where Apple is. Everybody knows Silicon Valley because of the companies, the tech companies of Silicon Valley, Apple, Google, Facebook, and because of the money that there is there and of the talent that there is there. But really, what is a tech ecosystem, and can we duplicate tech ecosystem? I mean, could we imagine that one day Ukraine become the new Silicon Valley? And it's interesting because when you listen to actually the Ukrainian government and the Minister of Digital Transformation, their big motto right now is, we are the next Silicon Valley. You will see, after the war, we will be the next Silicon Valley. Maybe, actually, why not? Let's discuss this. But really, what is a tech ecosystem? And a tech ecosystem is three things. And I always explain to people, it's a very simple thing to describe. It's an extremely difficult thing to build. And it's made with three things. The first thing is talent. If you don't have tech talent, basically you have nothing. And it's actually really hard to create or to raise tech talent. Ukraine is very lucky because this is one of the things that Ukraine had and has, is extremely good tech talent. Actually, just before the war, the last number we had was about 250,000 developers in Ukraine. So it's a really good pool of tech talent. Half of them were in Kyiv, half of them were between Kharkiv, Lviv, Dnipro. So not only tech talents, but also tech talents in the country. not just in one place like Silicon Valley. And so it was very interesting in Ukraine because we had several tech clusters. Kharkiv was a very good one because of the quality of the universities in Kharkiv, and Kharkiv Polytechnic is really good. Lviv was another one, also because of the university, but not only, because also of the presence of really good outsourcing company. And Kyiv was also the biggest one because of the size of the city, of course, and the quality of life you can have in Kyiv. So tech talent is traditionally something that we have in Ukraine, and we absolutely need to preserve. That will be actually one of the big challenges of the war. If you listen to the conversation, and actually not later than last night, I was in a conversation between a very famous Ukrainian VC, Victoria Tibipko, and Alex Bornyakov, the Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation, and they're fighting around what can we do with young men, developers in Ukraine today. Is it okay for them to leave the country because they're not going to fight, or they're more useful working and being tech developers? So is it okay for them to leave the country and to be safe and hopefully come back? Or do we need to keep them in Ukraine? So back to my point, talent is a key thing, and Ukraine is good with that. We have a pool of about 20,000, we had a pool of about 20,000 new tech talents being trained in universities in Ukraine every year, from coding schools to universities. So this pool of tech talent is increasing. And it's because Ukraine has a long tradition of tech. Sikorsky, the guy who created the helicopter, is Ukrainian. We have actually a lot of researcher and famous inventors who are Ukrainian. And so there's a long tradition of universities being really good in Ukraine and loving tech. So that's the first thing you need to create a tech ecosystem. You need talent. The second thing you need is actually something that is very easy to have, but not necessarily in Ukraine. It's money. And if you have talent and you don't have money, you cannot create companies. You cannot sustain the growth of companies, especially tech startup. This has always been a challenge for Ukraine. This was a challenge when I was at universities. This was a challenge before the war to get access to funding for those startups. And so that means that what we saw in Ukraine was we have that great pool of tech talent. We don't really create companies because they don't have access to funding. So what do? They work in outsourcing because this is where you can get a good job, but all the value goes outside of the country. You don't create great companies, you don't create great tech product, you don't create the new Facebook, you work for Facebook as an outsourcing company. That's okay, that's not the best. And we clearly see today that this will be one of the challenges after the war. Fixing the funding and access to funding for tech startup and tech company. The third thing you need to create a great tech ecosystem is a culture, and is a culture of entrepreneurship. And this is the only really hard thing to build. Trust me, we tried in France, we're still trying in France, and we still have a very hard time in France with the culture of entrepreneurship, even though things have changed over the past 20 years. Clearly, I mean, we've seen that with Station F, with all the alumni of ESSEC wanting to create a startup rather than working at the bank or at a consulting company. But we need a strong culture of entrepreneurship, and this is what Unicity is about. This is what the tech ecosystem is about. So we also saw during those pre-war period, the emergence of really strong, good unicorn in Ukraine. I mean, Ajax, companies like PetCube, MacPaw, GitLab, Preply, Grammarly. But a lot of people, for example, use Grammarly. Grammarly is a really great tech startup. It's amazing. It helps you correct your grammar when you write the text. It's a really nice large unicorn. Nobody knows it's a Ukrainian company, but most of the team is in Ukraine. And so we're starting to see emerging slowly but surely a lot of really interesting companies. One of the issue, and this is for you guys, something that we need to think about, including what we're going to do when we are going to rebuild Ukraine, is that most of those companies, they don't go to Europe. They don't take money from Europe. They don't get funding from Europe. They directly go to Silicon Valley and to the US. This was one of the trends we saw before the war, and this is still a trend we saw during the war, and I'm afraid this is something we will see after the war. 90% of the funding that goes into the tech ecosystem in Ukraine comes from the US. 90%, almost all of it. 10% of the funding comes from Europe, including Ukraine. So basically, the US understood very early on the potential of Ukraine as a talent pool and as a place where great technology was developed. And they've been doing that for years. They've been acquiring company. Amazon acquired Ring, and we have a lot of acquisition from American company. Snapchat acquired Luxury, and now Snapchat has more than 400 developers in Ukraine. And so we really see clearly that that trend of people coming that way. So that's kind of what I wanted to share about the tech ecosystem. And I see I have one question in the chat. Oh, yes. Well, so from Oleg, could you please share with us some recent innovation in Ukraine? Tons of really cool innovation from Ukraine. You will see a lot of innovation right now in Ukraine in terms of blockchain and cryptocurrency. I know cryptocurrency are not super great right now, but there's still a lot of things happening in blockchain. But where you will see the most interesting innovation is in military tech, and especially in drone technology. I know we talk a lot today in the news about the Iranian drones coming to Ukraine and being like kamikaze drones. Those are very low tech. Those are very stupid low tech drones, and actually most of them are destroyed by the Ukrainian forces before they hit. Not all of them, unfortunately, but yeah. But in terms of drones, for example, we see a lot of innovation, especially using 3D printing to add parts to drones, to hack them and to make them more efficient, fly longer, carry bombs, which they were not designed to do. And so we see a lot of things, and actually Ukraine will probably become one of the most advanced country after the war in terms of drone technology. It's extremely interesting. We see a lot of innovation, and you don't see that, guys, yet, but in terms of hacking. Well, let's move into the war. One of the things that was very surprising at the beginning of the war is that, well, we all discovered that the Russian army was not very efficient. It was supposed to be very advanced, doesn't look very advanced. It was supposed to be very big, very efficient. Not very big, not very efficient, it's super centralized. So the Ukrainian army, on the opposite, is extremely decentralized and seems to be, to many people who are looking at it, very efficient. But what was the most striking to me is actually the way it's organized. There is one thing that I didn't talk about, and that is revealing itself as extremely important as, and actually we could add that actually in the development of an ecosystem, is the role of the government. When I've moved to Ukraine, I was not expecting very simple things. I arrived, I remember my first trip in Ukraine, everybody was paying with their phones. In France, 4 or 5 years ago, we were not paying with our phones. In Ukraine, everybody was already paying with their phones. Very quickly, the government decided to create what they called the Ministry of Digital Transformation, which is led by an entrepreneur who is not even 35, and who is actually a very, very entrepreneurial spirit. And he decided, and he's the deputy prime minister of Ukraine. It's not what we have in France, where we have sous-secrétaire d'État en charge du numérique, which is like under secretary in charge of digital. No, the guy is deputy prime minister of Ukraine. And Ukraine had a very, very, very ambitious digitalization program. That was great. That is great. Then the war started, and they decided to apply that framework and that startup spirit to the way they're going to manage the war, and to the way they're going to manage IT during the war. So one of the first things they decided to do is to create the IT army. And the IT army is a self-organized army of people who enroll themselves. There's more than, I think right now there's more than 600,000 people in the IT army who are just hacking, and who are just hacking Russia. One of the things that was very surprising, and that is still very surprising to me, is why has Ukraine not been hacked? You know, when you talk about energy, for example, which is we see right now that it's an absolutely key sector. Well, you have two ways of hitting an energy plant. You can bomb it, or you can hack it. The easy way is not to bomb it. The easy way is to hack it. And actually, for those of you who were in Ukraine in 2014, you probably remember that Ukraine was hacked by Russia. The energy system of Ukraine was hacked by Russia in 2014, and it was really bad. This has not happened in Ukraine. And the reason why it has not happened is because Ukrainians have become the best hacker in the world, by far. And this is actually a very interesting evolution of what we see, because they have been able to protect their infrastructure very, very, very efficiently. And I think this is one of the key elements of the role of the government. The second thing we see is what we call the startup fund, the Ukrainian startup fund. So in France, we have something called BPI France, that you probably know if you're French, which is a government bank that has an absolute key role in financing innovation in France. Honestly, the tech ecosystem of France, with all the unicorns we have right now, would not be what it is without BPI France financing early stage and late stage startup and the tech ecosystem. Ukraine has the Ukrainian Startup Fund. Very different size, very different way of doing it, but same philosophy. Financing very early stage tech startup to help them grow and to create a good tech ecosystem. The Ukrainian Startup Fund, under the Ministry of Digital Transformation, has been able to completely reinvent itself during the war to finance military tech, very early stage military tech companies. And for example, to finance something that is very interesting called the Army of Drones. I was speaking of drones a little bit earlier as a key innovation, as an absolute game changer in the way the war can be can happen. And really, what we see is a key role of the Ukrainian Startup Fund in financing those very early stage startup in drone. So, for example, today, if you have a startup in drones in Ukraine, you can raise money. You can raise government money to develop your company, to buy parts, to do R&D, to etc. In a very easy way. So that's also one of the things that was that is very interesting. And one of the other key elements. So okay, the war started February 24th. And it was quick. It was for the most part unexpected. I mean, in Ukraine, I was in Ukraine, and everybody was like, no, this is not happening. This will not happen. Putin is not that crazy. He's not going to invade Ukraine. And for those of you who were in Ukraine at that time, you know, we were all debating on is this happening or not. But more people were thinking that it was not happening than people thinking that it was going to happen. I mean, of course, the Americans were telling us, no, it's happening. But the French were like, no, we don't see it really, not now, not this way. Limited on the east side. And most Ukrainians were like, no, we don't think it's happening. Well, anyway, it has happened. And we were all expecting to see the tech ecosystem collapsing. And that would have been natural in any other situation, probably in many countries. And this is absolutely not what happened. When we look at the numbers, year to year, we have a 20% growth of the revenue generated from the tech ecosystem during the period. 20% growth. The number of companies who disappear in the tech ecosystem is less than 4%. Less than 4%, which is not even usually what you see in a regular tech ecosystem. In France, it's much higher. And so basically, we saw the incredible resilience of the tech ecosystem during that period, and we still see it. So what are the challenges now? And this is really where we are, and I will start taking some question. Where are we standing now? There is one big challenge. There's two big challenges, and they're going to be really important for Ukraine from now and for the reconstruction. The first one is access to funding. Because as I told you, you need three things. You need talents. Ukraine has them. I will come back to that. You need culture. Trust me, this war is going to change everything in terms of culture and culture of entrepreneurship in Ukraine. That it will never be the same. It will never be the same in the tech ecosystem. People are going to start creating more and more tech companies in Ukraine because we see the potential. We see the potential of military tech. We see the talents. This is happening. So the first challenge is going to be access to funding. And where is this funding going to come from? And when is this funding going to come from? So one of the things that is happening right now is guarantees. The European Commission is pledging a 20 million euro fund for Ukraine to guarantee that anybody who is going to invest money in Ukraine in a tech startup will get its money back if the company fails, up to 20 million. The Ukrainian government will match that. And the US government is working on the same guarantee system to make sure that whoever invests money in Ukraine in tech, in a tech company, will get a guarantee that he will at least get his money back. This is key. This is actually one of the things that BPI France is doing. This is one of the things that COFAS used to do. It's now BPI-France, I think, but to offer guarantees to people who are willing to take the risk to invest in a foreign country such as Ukrainian tech. So we really need to fix this issue quickly, because nobody wants to invest in a country at war, but everybody sees a potential. Everybody sees a potential, and the potential is huge. The second thing, and this is the biggest challenge of all, is keeping the talent in Ukraine or having the talent coming back to Ukraine. I mean, I don't have the last numbers, but the numbers I had was 11 million Ukrainians moved. Some of them stayed in Ukraine, but at least 6 or 7 million Ukrainians left the country. I'm not sure of the number. I might say something very stupid. Maybe it's less. I don't think it's more. We need those people to come back. We need the tech talents to come back to Ukraine. This is the biggest challenge. And this will be one of the biggest challenge of the reconstruction, especially in tech, because tech talents are in high demand everywhere in the world. So those tech talents, when they leave Ukraine, have easily an easy way to find a job. So yes. Oh, and one last number, and a very interesting one. That I got from UVCA, the Ukrainian Venture Capital Association. There's more than 300 startups in Ukraine that have been able to raise money since the beginning of the war, 300. And they've raised more than $350 million. That's a lot of money. So there's still investment in Ukraine in tech. It's still investment in Ukraine in tech. But we need to keep that. This is absolutely key. Okay. Question from Olga. Several levels in the field. The war has several levels in the field: communication, digital. So who is winning on the digital level now, and what are the positions? Well, I think it's clear. It's very clear who is winning in the digital now. It's not only Ukraine; it's the free world. And so clearly on the digital field, it's Ukraine. They master the communication, and from day one, we saw the way President Zelensky communicate and use everyday social media to post his daily videos. I mean, Ukrainians are master of social media. But there's one thing we must remember, and actually that's very important. Russia, since a very long time, has its own ecosystem. For example, Facebook was not really big in Russia. It was more VKontakte in Russia. It's forbidden in Ukraine for years. And the problem with that is when you have your closed ecosystem, you don't communicate with the rest of the world. You're not connected to the rest of the world. And I think, to me, this is one of the signs that Russia was already getting enclosed in almost in a bubble. We see the same thing with China, by the way. Alibaba is in China. I mean, the Chinese tech ecosystem is very close. It's not open to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is not actually open or connected to that ecosystem. We had the same thing in Russia, and that's great when you want to keep your public opinion together and controlled. That's really bad when you need to communicate with the rest of the world. And what we see is Ukraine has embraced Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of this a long time ago, which gives Ukraine a voice and a reach that it didn't have before. So to me, it's really clear in the field of digital, Ukraine is winning by far, and the learning curve is extremely high, including, once again, from the government. We will learn a lot, and it will be in textbooks. Trust me. What the Ministry of Digital Transformation has done during this war will become one of the great lessons of this war. From Oleg, what is your opinion about the activity of Ukrainian fintech companies? Look, I really think they're doing a great job. I mean, Monobank, and I've always said that, and people who know me know that, has been so created by Dmitro Dubilet, and should be a benchmark, a global benchmark for any online bank in the world. To me, it's one of the best. It's really amazing what they can do. So I think fintech in Ukraine is very advanced. The market is not great and it's hard to expand, but I really think fintech are absolutely amazing in Ukraine. I think where we're going to see a lot of innovation is in blockchain and finance. And Ukrainians are extremely good because they're extremely good in math, are really good in blockchain, and that's going to be a very key element. Question from Bogdan. How do you see the strategy of attraction for European funds and investment compared to the US? That's a good one, Bogdan. Yeah, why Ukrainian startups are struggling and don't apply in Europe? How La French Tech Kiev could help in finding funds? Well, okay, that's my fight. So yes, look, that's a challenge. The challenge is very simple. The US is one big unified market with the biggest VCs in the world. I mean, 50% of the VC money invested in the world is invested from San Francisco. 50% of the VC money in the world is invested from San Francisco. I think more than 75 VC money invested in the world is from the US. Okay, so first, this is not the same competition. We don't compete in the same battleground. Then the European market. Is there a European market? And that's always the same question. As when you're a tech startup, you go to Germany, you start with the German market, then you move to London and you go to the UK market, which is completely different. Then you move to France and you do and so it's really, really complicated for a startup to have a European strategy and a European go-to-market strategy. It's country by country by country. Honestly, we need to try to work on this. That's the first thing. The second thing is unfortunately, I feel like French people don't understand Ukraine. They don't come enough to Ukraine. We see the Americans all the time. We don't see the French enough, and we need to create the bridge. And that's a job of La French Tech Kiev. That's what we should do more. That's why we will commit to do more. We need to create the bridge between our two ecosystems. We need to know each other better. We need to go to the same conferences, and we start doing that. We need to create the links. So if you have friends in Ukraine who are building tech startups, invite them to Paris, bring them to Station F, introduce them to people. I mean, we have look, in 20 years, we developed an amazing tech ecosystem in France. Amazing, from not much. So basically, we were where Ukraine is right now 20 years ago. So, and we're now one of the best tech ecosystem in Europe, if not in the world. So it's possible, but we need to create those bridges. Would you advise any platform to access? So question from Olga, would you advise any platform to access to startup pitches for investment purposes? No. No, I wouldn't, because I think they're all mostly bad. But what I would advise is to go to an accelerator. I think acceleration is great. It really helps. To develop your company. You have great ones depending on where you are, but if you are in France, you have great ones. Go to Station F, they host several of them. If you're in Ukraine, you have great ones. EO, supported by Ukrainian Startup Fund is one of them, and it's really good. Nest in Unity City is also really good. Demium, supported by partially the Spanish government, is also really good. So there's a lot of really good ones in Ukraine. But go to an acceleration. This is where you will learn to pitch, to build your pitch and really to pitch. This is where this is absolutely key. Good. Any more questions, guys? Yes.
You've been mentioning that in the time of war there was several innovations, and I know that one of your projects is actually printing
Yes.
school in Ukraine. Can you tell a little bit more about this?
Of course. How did I forget to talk about this? Of course. So, well, I've been passionate about construction for a while, and actually Unity City is also a construction project. It's building a tech ecosystem, but we're building buildings. And I've been really passionate about construction for quite a while now, for many years. So when we start seeing all the two things, all the bombings and all the people moving from Eastern Ukraine to Western Ukraine, needing to relocate, I started to think, okay, how can technology, because my philosophy of technology is here to help us, is here to help human beings. We can debate for hours on, is technology making us better, helping the world solve big problems? Not always. We can really debate this. But my philosophy, or the reason, my passion for technology is because I strongly believe that this should help us and support us build a better world. So I've been thinking a lot of, and then we did some research on 3D printing technologies, because I was like, but why if we could use 3D printers? So in Unity City, we have the largest 3D printing farm in Ukraine. We have more 3,000 3D printers. We've been doing prototyping, rapid prototyping, and et cetera. So we really love 3D printing. I was like, what if we could use 3D printing technology to print buildings, houses, schools? And so we did some research, and we actually had a lot of criteria. One of the criteria was, is it cheaper? Is it faster? Is it sustainable? And is it as strong as a regular building? And we discovered that there is a company in Denmark called Kobod that not only can do all of that, that is a world leader in 3D printing, but that can also help us print using 99% of locally sourced material. So we can bring the printer and we will find anything we need in Ukraine. We don't need to import anything. We just need to add some additives. So we decided to launch that project. We are currently building a school in Lviv, which is our first pilot. So very soon we finish the foundation. We are going to, unfortunately, with the recent bombing, it's a little bit complicated. It's very complicated to build during a war. Not the best idea, guys. Usually you're supposed to wait until the end of the, well, anyway. But we're 3D printing the school in Lviv. It takes, because we are in the learning process, it takes 3 weeks to print a 500 square meter school. It will take about a week once we have learned. And then we can duplicate this. We can take our printer, put it anywhere, and print a building, a school, a house. And this is really what we're going to do. But once again, we're doing it. I mean, we're doing it in Lviv as we speak. So that's one of the technologies that I really believe is going to help us. With that technology, you can print buildings. You can also print bridges. And we're going to need to rebuild bridges in Ukraine, a lot of bridges, not necessarily bridges across the Dnipro because it's too large, but bridges across smaller river, we will be able to print them. I see a question from Roman. which field of Ukrainian economy and region of Ukraine could be interesting for French investor in post-war period? Okay, so from what I understand and from what I know, the French government has developed a special relationship with the Chernihiv Oblast. So a lot of effort for the French investors are going to be focused on that oblast. I don't remember exactly the reason, but I know that the G7 countries decided to focus their efforts on specific oblast, to be really focused, to say, okay, well, we cannot do everything in Ukraine, so let's focus here, because then we can bring all our expertise, our investment, have more impact. So I know there's going to be a lot of projects financed by French government and French private initiative in Chernihiv. My foundation is looking at financing project in water and in 3D printing, of course. So if you're interested, I think this is, as a French person, this is where I would go. But once again, I think there's project everywhere. I mean, there's the needs are everywhere. Christina, can you suggest Medtech startup emerging in Ukraine? Yes. So I'm not going to name them but send me an email and I will share with you. One of the huge enormous need, and actually, I don't know if you see my bracelet, Unbroken. So I don't know if you heard this initiative, Unbroken, from the mayor of Lviv. One of the big need we're going to have is for people who lost an arm or legs, amputees, to print, actually 3D print arms and legs. Because of the nature of this war, we have a lot of those, because of the bombing, because of the mines. We unfortunately will have a lot of wounded that we'll need to have those technologies. So there's really interesting Ukrainian startup doing two things in two fields in Medtech. First, 3D printing, very complex. I mean, an arm or a hand is a very complex organism. So that is a field. There is another company, and I forgot their name, and I should remember their name because they were in Unit City, who is using stem cell to print bones. So, and once again, Ukrainian company, and of course they found funding in the US, and of course they're developing the technology in the US, which drives me nuts because this is always the same story, but you follow me. But printing bones, and this is extremely promising. We can take a few of your stem cells and we can actually from them print bones that are exact replica, which mean that there's a third technology behind that, which is 3D scanning. And Ukrainians are really good in 3D scanning, because to print a good body part, you need to scan the body part, and 3D scanning is very complex. And there is one Ukrainian startup called 3D Look that's actually started in fashion, that is now working on doing potentially those things. So a lot of potential there.
Yes, thank you, Dominique. Actually, the startup approach, startup mindset, help Ukrainians to organize against this war, and it's in the military and even for the volunteers, because it was unexpected. It was something new, so we was trying, testing, but since we was engaged, I think we quite succeed. Pierre-Emmanuel has joined us as the president of ESSEC Alumni Club of Entrepreneurs, and he has also some proposal. Yes, please, Pierre-Emmanuel, it's a floor for you. Present yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Olga, for the invitation, and Dominique for this very inspiring talk. We feel very humble when we listen to you, everything you achieve in such a context and such difficult zones. So thank you very much. And for congratulations, the first thing we want to say is how we can help. The question has been asked, but I think the entrepreneurship community can do a lot with ideas and even investments and so on to put the money and the effort into the right place. I just want to say a few words about the club, just to for the participants, so they know what we can do together. It's about sharing. It's about solidarity. So same values, of course, across ESSEC alumni and of course across, I would say, Ukraine chapter. What we do first is that we have a Slack, so just a tool to communicate each other and to be able to help each other. So you can ask your questions, you can ask for any recommendations, you can ask for any advice, for a contact and so on. We are about less than 1,000 on this tool, so there are a lot of people across the world, so do not hesitate to join us. The only criteria is that you have to be ESSEC alumni and you have to have launched your project or a very concrete project you want to work on. So if you feel that this is one of you, please join us. Then we have a mentorship program. It means that we have mentees that are maybe the most experienced entrepreneurs across the communities that want to help the newcomers, people trying to have an MVP or trying to build new businesses. So there is a matching with a platform with a specific program of mentorship, something one more time that can illustrate, I would say, the solidarity and help. And for who wants to launch their startup, launch their business, we have what we call Zoom Cafe, so 1 hour each month, where we can give you all the information about how ESSEC and ESSEC alumni can help. You know, you have always, there's always the same types of questions when you launch yourself. Where can I gain some financial heads? Where can I be accelerated? What can I do just to prove that I have a market and so on? So we have this meeting where some entrepreneurs will answer all of these questions. So it's just it's a global community all around the world of entrepreneurs, a lot of women, a lot of men in the various different sectors. We're looking, of course, for you if you need help, if you want to give also back to the community. And the last thing we do is that, of course, we coordinate with ESSEC, the school, how we can help also the students, how we can build events together. For example, there was last month the ESSEC Founders Day at the BPI, where there was a big event with the global ESSEC community around entrepreneurship. And as much as possible, because of course, as Olga, as a lot of people who are volunteers and we have other jobs, we try to do some partnerships with other chapters and to have other events on other thematics. So thank you very much, Olga, one more time for having proposed to do that in partnership with us. Thank you, Dominique, for this incredible and inspiring talk. And if you want to join us, I will give my mail, and of course, just be on the Slack to begin with, and you will have all the information, but all the events and everything you can offer yourself, and everything you can take back from the community.
Thank you, Pierre-Emmanuel. Dominique was mentioning here that 90% of investments are coming to Ukraine from US. So this Ukrainian market is not really well known for the French people and French investors. 2 weeks ago, we had a conference regarding agro sector with Mikhail Tereshchenko. Dominique, you might know him. So, and he is organizing a study tours right now in Ukraine, even for French political people and investors, to show the opportunity and investments are coming. As you mentioned, it's also coming now from America. So is there any movement, Dominique, on the side of our entrepreneurship project? Any kind of study tour or negotiation, a round table to attract, I know it's hard, you explain us why, to attract investments for the startups from Europe and France?
Well, I think this is something we could organize. Actually, La French Tech could definitely work on something, and we could work on something like that with you guys. Actually, why not?
To be honest, we have a meeting tomorrow morning with Clara Chapas from the French Tech and the school and ESSEC alumni, and we have also inside the community the ESSEC Club Business Angels with some money and some people willing to invest. So let's talk about it and see what it's maybe possible to organize specifically on that. I will transfer the information and the ID tomorrow morning at 8:30.
Cool. Yes, so maybe Dominique, if you have some
about it, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so maybe if you have some information to share about startups, like you mentioned today, fintech, Medtech, who are searching for the investments. So because we don't have information in France about them, so if you could share some information or some contacts, and we can organize some presentation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Good. Thank you very much for that. Is there any other questions in the audience? Bogdan, I think you was trying to ask the question. No? Daria was saying, no, it's okay for you. Any other questions from the audience? No? Okay, so then thank you. I think we are done for today. Thank you again, Dominique, so much time for your time and for this early wake-up call. You're receiving also thanks on the chart as well. So we keep in touch right now, and well, we'll hope for the peace that will come soon and all these horrible things are finished. So we have more opportunity to innovate and go further. And there is a question: is it possible to have Dominique your email?
Yes. Well, let me put it in the chat, and you can absolutely email me. You can also find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on whatever, but feel free to email me with great pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Yes. Have a nice day, Dominique. Bye-bye. Bonsoir. Good evening. Доброго вечора, Україні. До побачення.